Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have Max Waldron on, and he has been on not even both sides of the spectrum. It's like 3D. He's been a strength coach, but he is also a coach, but he is also a gym owner. So it's like a coach inside the gym plus owning the gym is what I meant by that. And in being through all three dimensions, I feel like this is a powerful way to distinguish the difference between what coaches are and what trainers are, as well as what is it that actually gets people results. Because in a world of mass information and in these current years where there's AI, there's apps everywhere, like open your phone and you're flooded with all the information that you need. Yet, despite it being the information age, the AI age, where you can literally just ask an AI robot to write you something specific for something, people are struggling more than ever. They are yo-yoing. They aren't seeing the results they want. We have an obesity epidemic. So it's not really the meal plan that you need, and it's not really the training app that you need or a training program, because you're not getting the results that you want from that. The transformation is in the process, not in the what to eat, how many reps to do. So with that, Max, introduce yourself, and I want to hear your take on this. What is it that you feel is the key element and the distinguishing factor here? What is it that people listening to this need to understand?
Alrighty, big question. But thank you. I will. So I'm Max, as Ruby said, and yeah, I have been in this space in different forms for a very long time. So I'm quite in personal trainer or coach years, about 150. But I started in strength and conditioning, studied exercise physiology. So pro sport was kind of my first exposure, along with being a PT while I was studying. Following that, I went private sector, spent a lot of time as an online coach. Online nutrition coaching was where I spent the bulk of my time online. And 5 years ago, I founded my own gym in Melbourne, which is a small group PT and semi-private PT studio, where we specialize now, even though I come from the elite athlete background, it's Gen Pop, and it's specifically people who, like, demographic wise, it's a lot of people over the age of 40. We've seemed to fall into that niche, but more specifically than that, it is people who are either not comfortable walking into a big box gym on their own, or they've had bad experiences in gyms with other trainers. We get that a lot. Or people that feel like they have tried everything before. And I think that's probably something you and I have in common, right? Since we were speaking before this, having tried the meal plans, having tried the workout apps and this and that, we'll typically get people that have tried all those things before. And I love working with those people. I'm really passionate about, I guess, giving people just no nonsense, useful, applicable information as a coach. And I think that's where I'll start answering your question, in that we are in an information age. It is easier than ever for people to find out exactly what they should or shouldn't be doing. And honestly, I think most people know what they should do, or more specifically, they know what they shouldn't do, right? I think one of the best things coaches can do sometimes is come down off their high horse a little bit, right? And go like, most people aren't stupid. Most people know stuff. It's just the doing part that's lacking, right? Because despite every, fitness company in the world these days, or weight loss company, trying to sell this idea of like 8-week transformation, you're going to be shredded, it's going to be the easiest thing in the world. The truth is, it's actually, sometimes it's really hard, right? It's actually really hard for people to find the time to get to the gym. It's hard for people to make the right choices when it comes to food. particularly if they've spent, 5 or 10 years making poor choices. Like the thought that you're just going to switch that in a month or two is a little bit unrealistic. So when it comes to where coaches can be impactful, honestly, I think the best thing coaches can do is we can help our clients filter through the noise, right? Because yeah, it's great to Google search something or chat GPT something or whatever else. But if you get 10,000 results, well, all of a sudden, how do you know which one's right and which one's wrong? That's where the coach comes in. It's like, all right, cool. The coach is there to go, well, what have you tried before? What have you found didn't work for you? Okay, well, cool, let's rule those ones out. What can you see yourself doing? What is realistic right now? Okay, from that, let's work on some strategies to actually help you do it. And that's the big thing. And I'm a smart ass, I should tell you. So one of the things I'll say to clients all the time, it's like, your health isn't like a Christmas present. It's not really the thought that counts. It's what you do that matters. So that's where I think coaches come in. It's helping people actually do the stuff that they already know they should be doing. Hopefully that makes sense.
You just opened up. Well, it's a usual. It's Ruby. You got Ruby here. Every single thing that gets mentioned opens up Pandora's box. And the funniest thing about what you just said is that most people would not have realized what you just did. In that, what were you doing? You asked a series of questions. But what is the typical experience of someone that goes to a trainer or a coach or is a number to someone? Oh, this is what you need to do. And the women that come to me, many of the times, it's a mental shit stir for me to try to unwind all of these beliefs and them using old metrics of progress and old ways of trying to get somewhere when they're trying to get to new destinations. It's like you can't keep using those same methods if you want to get somewhere else. And that's also something that many trainers do because they just want to keep the client. They just want to keep the money. They don't actually challenge the client by asking questions, by making them, because you already know, like that I'm with you on this level. It's like you already know the answer to the question. So I'm not going to answer the question that you're superficially asking. I'm going to ask you the question because I already know that you know the answer to the question that you're technically asking. It's just that there's fear there. For example, why is XYZ happening when in reality it's because I'm really scared of letting go of the way I used to do things. So I want to question everything. It's like, you know the answer because you've done that before and it wasn't working. You've done that before and you ended up back in the same cycle, overeating, XYZ. It's asking the questions. And many of those clients also come to me. The biggest thing, okay, it's like the freaking, Renaissance periodization. It's like that app where you log in, were you compliant with your macros? What's your scale weight? If the scale weight didn't go down and you were compliant, they cut your macros and they keep cutting your macros until the scale weight goes down. So all your progress was judged by was scale weight. And we're already in an abundance of things thrown at you, telling you scale weight this, lose that. It's like that's all we've been marketed. How are you meant to know progress by any other name? It's almost like Rumpelstiltskin. Until you can put yourself into the situation where you know the name, it's the scariest thing ever kind of thing. But as soon as you can actually do the thing, it's not that scary anymore. The devil goes away. It's like your little princess fairy poof into thin air.
Yeah.
But yes, tried everything before. This is leading into something that sparked what I was really excited for you to talk about. And it's not just everything, it's other coaches, other trainers, and many times it's never felt personal. And yes, it's not just knowing what you need to do, because like you said, there's many blind spots and many biases that we have. And with the questioning, it's digging deeper into that behavior change. And it's not about you knowing or not knowing what to do. It's about what is actually stopping you and what stops yourself.
Yeah, which is usually a massive can of worms, right? When you unpack that. And, I think most, how do I say this without, I'm not going to try and be polite, but there's a lot of trainers out there that realistically, they're just not very good, right? So it's not even necessarily their fault per se, but they're told a certain way. They've gone and done their certification or their course, and this is the way we do things. And that's the only way they know how to do things. So I get my client, I give them macros, cool. I'm going to cut their carbs by 20 grams every week. And then, you know what, at some point that's going to stop working. Great, cool. Maybe we'll reverse diet for a bit, and then we'll just rinse and repeat that process, because that's the only thing I know how to do. And if my clients, not adherent with their macros, well, that's obviously my client's fault, because they're not committed and they're lazy and all the rest of it, right? Of course, it couldn't be the fact that the plan was completely unrealistic from the get-go, but whatever, right? But yeah, I think with what you're trying to unpack there, I would ask you a quick question as well, like, just to make sure I'm with it, like, how would you answer that?
The question, which one?
The one you asked about in terms
Stopping
of
themselves.
Yeah, like, so one of my most quoted phrases, right, is this saying that I say to clients all the time. I'm like, look, I'm not a psychologist, but because I feel like a lot of this stuff does, like, I did a degree in nutrition, right? So I did exercise physiology and nutritional science. And nutritional science that I learned was exclusively biochemistry. In the real world, it's pretty useless, right? I can explain, the breakdown of carbs and the Krebs cycle and all this kind of stuff. But, no client has ever had an issue with their nutrition because of a lack of an understanding of biochemistry, right? It's the psychology aspect. It's what is stopping this person, right? And sometimes I genuinely believe it's a couple of things. I generally feel that a lot of the time clients are chasing a goal and they're not even sure why they're chasing that goal in the first place. And that's a massive problem. I think they're either chasing a goal that was given to them by a previous coach or trainer, or maybe it's a societal goal that they just feel like that's what they should do. Or maybe there was a time that they used to weigh a certain amount, so they feel like, I just need to weigh that amount. And then if you were to ask them, were you happy with your body when you used to weigh that amount? Generally, they'll say no, but they just want to get back to it, right? So there's a lot of that. And I think that stops a lot of people, because if you're not 100% sure why you're doing something, well, inevitably it is going to become difficult. And then subconsciously, maybe it's just not worth the sacrifice and the effort that you're trying to put yourself in, because you don't actually want that goal in the first place. And that's why I think goal setting, or, not goal setting how it's traditionally done, but true goal setting, motivational interviewing, whatever you want to call it, is so important. Because if we can't establish what our clients actually want, it's really hard to get them to adhere to anything. And that's what I think stops a lot of people. Like, from the start, the goal was maybe wrong. They weren't even sure why they were chasing that thing to begin with.
You said something, and I wanted to actually say the opposite to it. And that's, most people will say yes, they were happy with their body then, but they actually weren't. It's just that memories are false. Like, memories are not real. You can like believe it to the nth degree that memory is real, but it gets changed over time based on experiences, based on what you've been through, based on other things that start to distort your beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. The longer that you've been through things, and the more experiences and emotional things, and even quote unquote trauma that you've been through in the process, that distorts anything of the past. Yes, like, for me, when I look back at what I thought was my best body, it's not that it was my best body. I realized this when I was actually reflecting on what I was missing most when I started my new focus as of last week. And what I missed most then is how strong I was focusing on lifting heavy deadlifts. And that is what I was missing. That made me feel powerful and confident, and like I could just rip things up. And I'm like, it was that lifting heavy shit that gave me the body that I have now, number one. But it also just made me so excited to just show up into the gym and focus on my deadlift, like having something that I was in love with. And that's the same with you. It's like, what else was happening around in your life that made you love that moment? For me, it was that deadlift. It was the fact that I had all this other energy in my life and I was excited. So what was I missing? I needed to get myself excited again, and I needed to bring the deadlift in. So what did I do? I changed things in my life. I changed the things that weren't giving me the excitement that I used to get from them, which have nothing to do with training and my food. It's nothing to do with physique. It's my actual life stuff. I'm like, I had to shift stuff there to get excited. And then I had to bring the deadlift back in and start chasing strength again. What is it that actually needs fixing? And this goes back to what is actually stopping you, because you're not aware of that until you actually start asking yourself the questions. But no one stops and asks themselves the questions. No one wants to do that homework because it's intangible. It's going too slow. It means that you can't focus on changing your body, which is the only thing you seem to care about at the start. And because of that, then your behavior change isn't happening. And if the foundations aren't there, then everything's going to fall through and nothing's going to be permanent or consistent. So my answer to what's stopping people is usually, well, if you mention the goals, there is that, but also most people don't even realize that those goals aren't such a focus anymore because they haven't slowed down to ask themselves the question. So what usually does stop people is the fact that they're scared. I feel like most people are scared to slow down and get clear on what it is they want, break things down, and actually think instead of do, chase. But yeah.
Because it's uncomfortable, right? Like, and I say this to people all the time, like, if people come in and they're doing a consultation with me, fair warning, like I go pretty hard, right? And by hard, I mean, I'm super nice. I'm very empathetic, but I'm going to ask the tough questions. I'm going to ask them the questions that nobody asked them before, right? Because especially I go, well, you've had all these conversations before. Like, what do you want me to tell you that, hey, if you exercise and eat better, that's going to work? Like, you already know that. So let's skip over all that. And a lot of it is figuring out like, okay, cool, bit of goal setting. What's the goal? How long have you been trying to do this for? What have you tried to do? Cool. Well, we can probably rule all that stuff out, right? That hasn't worked for you, right? Going through all that. And then a big part of it as well is, and this is a bit of a simplification, but sometimes I'll get halfway through, right? I'll be speaking with a client and I'll go, all right, let's just stop. Right now, I can tell you pretty clearly that the reason this hasn't worked is because everything you've been trying to do was never going to work in the first place. Like, this was doomed from day one, right? There's something missing here, right? We're making the same mistake. We're caught in this vicious cycle, like, call it the yo-yo, right? It happens all the time. Like, okay, cool. My pants don't fit. I'm not feeling really good. So from Monday, there's no more sugar. There's no more this. There's no more that. I'm going to work out every single day, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, eventually that unravels, right? You go and eat the thing that you said you'd never eat again. So you feel terrible about yourself. You don't just eat a little bit of it. You eat all of it, turns into a binge episode. Cool. Now you've given up on the diet entirely. And then eventually we end up right back at square one and we try and do it all over again, right? That pattern happens all the time. So I think that's part of why. I think the fear part is part of it for sure. I think there's two ways of looking at it. There's a fear of failure, right? That one's reasonably simple, I think, for most people to understand. Like, what if I fail at this again? And I think every time somebody fails, specifically in this space, right? Like, if we're talking about these clients that they've tried everything, it hasn't worked. And these are the clients that I really feel for. Like, they've kind of had the shit kicked in their face. Sorry if I'm not allowed to swear. By the fitness industry.
We're in Australia.
Yeah, we can swear. But like those type of clients, right? They've done this program with this coach. They went and did Weight Watchers for a little bit. They did this, they did that. And like every time they fail, I feel like it just breaks them down a little bit more, right? Because it just confirms this belief that they're not going to be able to do it. Like, I always fail when I try to lose weight. Like, I can never stick to it. I'm just someone who can't stick to things. And if that's how they view themselves, that's really hard to overcome, right? And that's where I think, if as a coach you can recognize that, you go, the biggest barrier with this person is they view themselves as somebody who can never stick to anything. Okay, cool. That's what we need to tackle, Okay. We need to slowly prove to them that they are somebody who can stick to it. Right. And I think that's massively overlooked a lot of the time.
That last part, this is where it is like, this is so important for you as the client,
Hmm.
you as the person listening to this. Like, we want to help you build this stack of proof, but it's never going to happen if you don't readjust the expectations you have and get freaking patient with shit, which is really difficult for you when all like you're so uncomfortable with where you are. Of course, you want change. You've been working your ass off. Of course, you want to see something for it. But grinding it harder right now is what is stopping you. We need to slow down so that we can then troubleshoot this stuff, because then we can actually start to move forward. It's that very thing there. And the problem that you're experiencing right now isn't actually the problem, it's the symptom. But if we can actually slow down and figure out, okay, so what's causing this? Let's scale things back, then voila. And something you said about every time someone fails, this is kind of leading into my biggest, well, what was my biggest struggle. But when every time you fail, not only does your confidence drop, but you don't even realize this, it's subconscious, it's happening under the surface. You become less committed. You really, really want it still because you don't like where you are, you hate where you are, you're so uncomfortable, and you need, like, you want the change, you're sick of struggling. But internally, you're less committed, you're giving less effort because it hasn't worked before. You feel like you're giving it your all, but deep down, no. And this feeds the cycle of failure because you feel like you're working really hard, but you're not going to get anything because that effort isn't there. But then this is kind of where the yo-yo cycle starts, which is why I always feel like people need to stop having their mind so fixated on scale going down and start thinking, how can I build a lifestyle that allows me to feel good right now, so then I can focus on whatever that goal is, and maybe you'll get clearer on that goal too. But the thing that I struggled with within this is, because I was struggling so much, I was grinding my ass off. I was doing the workouts, busting my ass. I started losing motivation in all of this, which is another side effect of failing. Well, not even failing. Like, I never really can relate to failing because I love failure. Like, I chase it. It was more so the struggling while I'm working hard and not seeing results. To me, that's not failure. It's just not seeing results. But because of that, I didn't want to let go of what I was doing or do less or just take a step back, because what if then I lose progress? What if I end up worse? I cannot possibly do any inch more than I am doing right now. So if I can't commit to anything more, I'm just going to end up even worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then I'm going to completely lose the plot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty common too. And I look at this sometimes, and I'll often ask clients this as well. It's, if we're going, all right, they're in the situation you're describing, or in this other situation where they just view themselves as someone who can't do it. Again, it's about asking questions, but one of mine would be, it's like, I'm just someone who's not committed, or I'm someone who can't stick to things. I just go back, okay, cool. Well, what would need to happen, right, for you to think that you could stick to it? So now I'm like, all right, cool. Like, let's just say, let's have this chat. Imagine, right, it's a month from now. If you've turned up and you've done it, say 3 times per week for a month, could we agree that you stuck to it for a month? It's like, yeah, cool. Okay, great. The same thing when it comes to food, right? It's like, all right, cool. If we said we had a really general plan here, like, and this is hard for people that are like obsessed, not obsessed, but they believe that they need to follow a meal plan, right? The meal plan is the only thing that will work, but they can follow it from Monday through Thursday, and then the weekend blows out. Like, common problem. It's like, all right, cool. Well, if you think, what would need to happen for you to think that you could stick to a plan? Like, what if we made the plan more flexible, say, and it was, whatever it is, protein this, we might track something, we might not, whatever it is. Cool. So if you did that for, say, 2 weeks without having one of these weekends, like, we could say that actually you could stick to it, right? They'll be like, oh, yeah, cool. Maybe I could. Okay, great. So then maybe it's not the fact that you're someone who can never stick to anything. Maybe the plan that you were trying to stick to just wasn't a good fit for you right now, right? And I think that's important for whether if you've got a coach, like hopefully they're having those conversations with you. But even if you're a client listening to this and you're kind of banging your head against the brick wall, right? Where you go, all right, I'm trying to follow the plan and then I'm falling off, trying to follow the plan, fall off. On the one hand, it's so easy to go, but I'm not seeing results. So the only solution is to work harder, right? I empathize with that. It's very much how I'm wired. I've gone through those battles, myself for sure. But if we can go like, all right, what we need to do is prove to ourselves that we can in fact stick to something, we can in fact commit to making some form of change. Maybe we need to lower that bar temporarily, right? In order to be able to raise it up long term. And if you're listening to this and you're still skeptical, like sometimes it's a simple, and this is a brutal question for people, but it's like, you think the meal plan is the best way to make progress, and they go, oh yeah, absolutely, cool. How much progress have you made in the past 12 months by following the meal plan? And if you're in that situation, the stop-start yo-yo with the meal plans, like that's a pretty harsh question, and it does highlight some things, but eventually, it's like, what's the definition of insanity? The Einstein quote, right? It's like doing the same thing over and over and over again, but expecting a different result. Like if it hasn't been working for 12 months, it's probably not going to work moving forward.
It's not even the meal plan, because I think like this used to be a thing way back before. I think it was mostly before COVID, where everything, like I was basically meal plans with helping clients with meal plans until like the COVID era. And then things kind of like, that's when macro tracking became a bigger thing. That's when these apps for tracking macros became a bigger thing. It's like, I feel like one of the biggest things is not just the meal plan in itself. It's more so, okay, less calories, low calories, low calories, calorie deficit, this, that, and the other. But it's like, okay, so how has trying to fit in, like trying to eat really little all the time or just cruise on the lowest calories possible 24/7, how has that served you so far? How are your other behaviors? And most of the time we don't even think twice about the stuff that kind of is keeping us stuck, that isn't getting logged in the calorie deficit, because our mind is fighting us. But the thing that I find is the one that is probably a really good thing to challenge as well. It's like, okay, well, how has putting so much value on the scale and letting it dictate and run your life worked for you so far? Has it got you to where you want to be if that's the only thing that you're focusing on? Because from what I can see, it's leading you to complete frustration and your behaviors and actions. Like if all you can pin progress to is the scale, what's going to happen when it stops moving? What happens when it's going to inevitably fluctuate? What's going to happen when you're already in a place, when you get to a place where the scale will always fluctuate because you're not going to see it go down anymore? You're in a relatively healthy body fat percentage, and that's when the scale fluctuates the most. That's when you'll probably see it go up a hell of a lot more too. Then what? And if all you do in your actions with how much you move, how much you do your exercise and training, and how you eat, if that's only something that you care about when you see the scale go down, or when the scale is your justification for acting in a certain way, how I don't see that as freedom. Like I see that as a prison. Like how is that serving you? How's that serving your life? How's that serving the things that you actually value in your life, like your family, like holidays, like enjoying yourself, feeling free? Because it's not meant to be a grit and grind. And that's exactly why this whole thing is a matter of, well, I always like to say fat loss is a phase anyway. It's not a lifestyle. And when you learn how to, when you learn how to live outside of a fat loss phase, you'll trust yourself a lot more. But that actually just brought something to mind, which I want you to talk about as well, because there's a concept that I want you to really dig into, because you sparked and like, no, I want to talk about that. But I think a lot of people are really scared to get gritty and dirty and throw themselves all in with the sacrifices of a fat loss phase, because they don't understand how it actually works in the concept of, let's get you the heck away from low calories for a while. Let's build up all of these habits. Let's work on all the sabotage bullshit. Let's get you not focused on it so that we can go in, dive in deep, and you know that you know how to maintain it. You know that eating more calories is not going to turn you into a freaking Oompa Loompa rolling around like bloody, what's her name? The one that turned into a blueberry?
Yeah.
Veronica,
Yeah.
that's her. You don't want to be a bloody Veronica blumping around. Like, you know this. You know that this is your maintenance now. You know that we can get you out of a deficit when it isn't serving you anymore. I have a client example of that in particular where she was trying to force it and she was just, I need to try to get good on my diet again. I'm like, do you really feel like the diet is serving you right now? Do you feel like we can have a diet break and then do the diet again? And she's like, no, I'm fine. She did it again for another week. I'm like, let's pull you out. And then that's when she agreed. And then she said to me a couple of days later, I didn't actually think that I could just do a diet break. But after being in one for a few days now, I'm actually wishing I just did that earlier because it would have worked out so much better. And that's the thing, like, you can pull yourself out without losing your progress, because just because you're not dieting doesn't mean you're going to gain fat, doesn't mean you're going to gain weight. And when you realize that life isn't all about restriction and more trade-offs, like it is in a fat loss phase, because fat loss phases aren't meant to be sustainable. I freaking hate the industry saying it should be sustainable. It's like, no, the more you try to make your freaking diet sustainable, the more you're going to freaking struggle, because it's not sustainable. Fat loss, this is like my biggest gripe. Fat loss and balance do not exist. Fat loss and sustainable do not exist. Fat loss is not sustainable, and there is no such thing as balance and fat loss, because it is the worst thing to have to struggle through trying to lose weight all the time. And that's why it's so much better to just get in there. And then when you're not on diet calories, let's get you out. And you can have a freaking day at maintenance if you need to have a day at maintenance. You're not going to gain weight there either. It's just
100%.
like you need to. That was just a gripe that I had.
No, I 100% agree. And it's like, people say like, oh yeah. And the problem is like this filters its way down into clients as well, right? So they become a little bit more educated, which overall I'm all for. But now I'm sure you encounter this, like, oh yeah, no, I just want to make sure that like, I really want to, like, I want to lose weight, I want to lose fat, but I really want to make sure that like it's super sustainable. And you're like, okay, cool. I agree that the overall strategy should be sustainable, right? But like by very definition, a calorie deficit is not a sustainable thing, right? Like it's not. It's pure and simple. And my approach really for fat loss is I would honestly go, I want to spend with any client, but even myself, I want to spend as little time possible doing it, which means I want to go as hard as possible at the time, right? Because the longer you do it, the worse it is, right? So yeah, I don't want it to be sustainable at all. No, we're trying to, like, at the end of the day, like you need to disrupt homeostasis to lose weight. Like by very definition, it's not a sustainable thing. So I totally agree with you on that. And I think to circle back on something you were talking about, like the scale weight, there's like this quote, and I still see people like post these coaches. They're like, what gets measured gets managed, so you should measure all these things because then you highlight it for a client, right? And like, cool. I would have a different take. I would say this. I would say measure what matters, right? That's far better because, and this is where I think like the goal setting part's really important. If you take that extra time, right? So if you've got a coach and they're not doing this, you have my permission to fire them, hire somebody else. But even take the time to do it with yourself. And it's figuring out like, okay, what's the goal? There's absolutely nothing wrong with having a goal that is based on looking a certain way. Because you know what? Like there's two types of people, right? There's people that want to look good naked, and then there's people who lie about it. Everybody wants to look good. That's the truth.
I love it.
Right?
I love it. Yes.
Like, yeah, my degree's in exercise physiology. Like, yeah, health metrics are important, but everybody wants to look good. That's just reality. But what you want to do is go the layer beneath that. Like, what's so important about you looking that way? What's so important about you being that dress size? What's so like when you go confidence? Yeah, bullshit, right? There's more than confidence. Like, where do you want to be confidence? Like, where do you want that? What do you want to be able to do as a result of being confident? Go as deep as humanly possible, right? Because you will get to the actual goal eventually, right? And look, sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, it's not a goal you can put a number on, like the scales, right? I get that. But inevitably, like, it's going to boil down to, like, you want to feel good about yourself. And if that's the case, then you know what? Obsessing over the scales, you're probably never going to feel good about yourself if you're doing that every day. Like, nobody wants to do that. You know, like, nobody is like, if anybody could look me dead in the eye and say, I really enjoy weighing chicken breast and obsessively weighing myself every single morning, like, they are lying. Absolutely. Like, nobody wants to do that as an end goal. So I totally agree with you. Like, fat loss is a phase. It's a phase that's part of the overall goal, right? So don't, whatever it is, what gets measured gets managed. Yeah, whatever. But just think more about measuring what actually matters to you, right? Like, I've had plenty of clients have amazing physical transformations, and you know what? They didn't even weigh themselves. It was wild, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't weigh yourself, but I'm saying you don't have to.
I'm with you on that. Like, I think the scale is probably the worst thing for most people, especially at first, because they don't even know how to tune into their bodies. They've never even experienced life without a scale dictating their emotions. With me, when clients come to me and I know they have that background with scales, or I know that even if they don't realize it impacts them. I had a client who didn't use the scales for 5 years, and then she's like, I think I'm ready to use it again. And she forced herself to keep pushing through. And then she admitted to me, like, a few months in, nah, I think you're right. I'm still impacted by scales. Like, it's just weird how, I know, it's like just weird, but she didn't need the scales. Measure what matters. But it's like, I have this thing where you need to never step on a scale for 6 months to start with. I want to start getting you to tune into yourself and to start making decisions based off the you that you want to be in the future, which isn't a scale number. It is health focused. It's mindset focused. It's let's figure out what's actually holding you back and fix that shit. Let's figure out what habits we need in this like, back to the goal setting. People usually just set like this. It's either a goal that's completely absurd, like you mentioned, like really far out. It's completely the opposite of where they are now, or it's just unrealistic, not aligned to them, or it's I don't want to X. I want to move away from X. I want to stop X. It's all avoidance, never to. People don't even know how they want to live their life. But that was the goal thing. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that on the scales. But I'll go back to what I want to say after you finish what you were saying.
No, that's good. I think you pretty much summarized it there. I think that's really important. Like, and yeah, I'm glad you said that. Like, again, it's not being anti anything. Like, there's absolutely situations where it makes sense to weigh yourself. But, I'd say, like, particularly for women, it's far worse than it is for men, right? Like, I didn't grow up weighing myself. Like, if anything, the only time I did was when I was playing football, and they were always like, you're too skinny, you need to bulk up, right? So I was the opposite end, but like, it's not really a thing. Whereas for women, there's certainly been, through, especially, any women between the ages of, like, I don't know, 30 and 50, like that whole diet culture from the 90s into the 2000s, where it was just obsessed with body weight, right? So there's that history, and it's like, well, you know what? Like, you could spend time, exposing yourself and being like, you know what, these are just numbers and they don't determine my self-worth and all the rest of it. Cool, that's a valid strategy. Or, as you say, you could just not weigh yourself for 6 months and just be like, it doesn't matter. Like, to be honest, that sounds like an easier approach to me.
Yeah, and many people fail to adjust their goals and actions as they evolve, which just makes you more frustrated and self-sabotage even more. But that was kind of where I wanted to get to. And yeah, we want to look smoking naked, but there's more to it. Like,
Yeah.
we don't bring this shit out. It doesn't matter. Wait, back to what I was saying. It doesn't matter what the hell you do with your body, because it won't stick. And if it does, it will be a nightmare to either maintain or to keep trying to chase the never ending horizon, because most of the time it is that, which leads to number 3. You won't even realize the body that you have or the results that you got, because you're still living in the gap and not the gain. You're still living in lack and not in abundance, because you haven't changed anything else in your life and you don't even know why the freaking hell you're doing this for. And like Goodhart's law, in order to get to the outcome, you sacrifice the real reason that you are doing this for, to have more energy, to have an abundant life, to play with the kids. But now what you're doing is just so obsessed over calories and probably have a negative relationship with food in the process. So it's all, yeah, it's that exact thing. That's what I wanted to go into. But the thing that I wanted you to kind of explore there is that we never actually get clear on what we want our life to look like and where we want to head with that. And I feel like the whole diet sustainability, not sustainability, fits into this, because it's like, what does a life of maintenance look like? Like, if you, what actually is your goal? Like, if it's fat loss and you're not like, being realistic. I'm not talking about you want to lose the last 5 pounds. Sorry, I talk American all the time. The last 2 to 3 kilos, last 5 pounds, like that. Even like up to 8 pounds, up to 4, 5 kilos. If you are only focused on that, or if you've been in the yo-yo, it's not another diet that you need. It's not more calorie deficits that you need. It's probably not even maintenance that you need. Well, yeah, I would say start at maintenance. The biggest issue I'm now seeing is that people are so fixated on what they're eating and what they're doing with food and their calories and this and that. But that same level of attention doesn't go into the quality of their training, when it is literally the training that builds the muscle and builds the body, if that is your goal. So if it's always, I still have this stubborn belly fat, I'm dieting all the time, I'm working really hard, but I'm not seeing any leanness or hardness. I'm not, like, my belly's still not toned. I'm still not this, that, and the other. It's like, you can diet all you like. This was actually a post I wanted to do, but I haven't, because I don't know how to put it out there. So you can probably help me later on. Like, just message me something that comes up in your mind. But it's like, I have this photo of me from ages ago when I was about 10. How heavy am I in now? I don't even know. I'm just going to estimate. I think I was probably like 10 kilos lighter, 8 kilos lighter, which is like 20 pounds, 16 pounds lighter. I had some ab definition, yes, but I was also eating not all that much. Like, my calories were pretty damn low. I didn't have as much energy. I felt weak as shit. Well, I didn't feel weak as shit, but I was weak as shit. And I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to eat more food. Everything, like, when you're a small female, things stick to you more because you don't have as much calorie buffer. Carbs don't hit you the same way because you don't have as much muscle mass to use those carbs, and that impacts blood sugar, blah blah blah. But the thing is, would you want to just get to your absolute smallest version of yourself just to try to see some sort of hardness in your body, where the rest of you is like, most people can't even get to that level because you can't push your calories that low, and it's totally unsustainable? Or would you want to live a bigger, fuller life where you can actually build from the bottom up, and that creates the shape and all that shit that you want, which we went from behavior change and not getting results to something that most people listening to this do actually want, and that's to feel better, to feel stronger, to feel more confident. If you want to look smoking naked, like, as much as we feel like it's not as much muscle that we need to build, I'm telling you, it is a fuck ton more muscle than you realize. It's just that it doesn't look that way because muscle isn't bulky. Muscle is not bulky. It's the most compact, sculpted thing ever. It's just the body fat that's on it. But where most people go wrong, I will let you go onto your spiel soon. Where most people go wrong is that they don't realize just how long it takes to build that muscle, and the fact that you need to fuel that muscle. And if you keep going into calorie deficits every single summer because it's summertime, it's going to be really freaking hard for you to see the changes and progress that you want.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. On the social media post point, I remember I posted this, I think it's on my old Instagram. I say old, I just don't use it very much. Whereas more for clients. And I posted something like, your dream body probably weighs more than you think it does. It was something along those lines. And it's pretty much what you're saying, right? And this is not me trying to rag on different types of training, but like, you could go to and watch any F45 fit stop or whatever the hell, right? And you'll very rarely or pretty much never see somebody in there who's in like really, really good shape, right? It doesn't happen very often. I think it's great. It gives people an easy, low barrier way to exercise. Absolutely. All for it. Community, fun, vibes, great. But the problem is it's constantly running challenges. So everybody is always dieting. So you're always in a calorie deficit. And then nobody's really training hard. Well, nobody is strength training hard. Let's put it that way, right? And the thing is, like, a calorie deficit, everyone thinks that like calorie deficit is a good thing, right? Well, it's detrimental to performance in every single sense of the word. So really, to your point, it's like, you've got a dream body. Well, yeah, you need to build some muscle mass. Well, okay, that involves not being in a calorie deficit, right? So spend as little time as possible dieting, right? So if you've got a little bit of weight to lose at the start, cool, lose the weight. But then you kind of want to get in, get out, and get back to productive training, right? And productive training requires fuel for your body, okay? Productive training and calorie deficit do not coexist, or they can't coexist for a very long period of time. Let's put it that way. And I think, to answer your point on like sustainability, right? Here's the interesting part where I think sustainability is an important thing, but it's sustainability of your behaviors, your actions, and your habits. It's not that a calorie deficit itself should be sustainable, because we've already said it shouldn't be, right? But it's where, if your goal is to feel good and yeah, look good naked and all that kind of stuff, well, the way that you do stuff does matter, right? So if you've hated what it took to get you to that point, it's pretty unrealistic that you're going to keep on doing it, right? So I think that matters. Along with this, I think how do I describe this? The lowest barrier thing for most people to do, the lowest barrier thing for most people to do is to spend less time when it comes to maintenance, thinking about the specifics, the science of nutrition, tracking macros, and just putting more time into creating an environment that makes it easier for them to keep on doing the right stuff, right? So what I mean by that is, there's tons of studies on this, but if your biggest change was, and I spend time with clients doing this all the time, I'm talking to them about nutrition and I'm spending their time, they're going like, okay, cool. What's the day that's most convenient for you to do grocery shopping? Okay, what's the biggest issue you have when you do grocery shopping? Okay, how are we going to manage this? I'm loving this. Don't worry, if I was doing this at home, it'd be absolute chaos, but luckily I'm at work. But yeah, it's like creating the environment's really important. And a lot of this time, this will happen naturally, but you can do it for yourself. So yeah, like if I'm working with clients, yeah, cool. Like you've had really good success. Like, okay, great. But let's just make sure the environment around you makes it easier for you to keep on doing it. Like if your fridge is full of like lean protein and vegetables, you're going to eat better, right? You just are. If you're put the appointments in your diary so you know when you're going to the gym, you're more likely to go. Simple stuff like that makes a massive difference. And something that I've been doing with clients for a while, and I heard Josh Smith talk about this, and he gave it a different name. And I loved the name that he gave it because I didn't know what to call it. But he called it a success criteria. And this was advice for coaches, but I think it can be applied really well for clients. And it's going, whenever things go wrong, we're really quick to try and analyze what the problem was. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But like, what do you do when things go right? Like, we never really think about it, right? It's just like, oh yeah, cool. Like that was good, play on. But what he talked about, I believe he called it a personal success criteria, which is a pretty sexy name, which is why it stood out to me. But it's basically, okay, you've had a really good week, right? You nailed your training sessions, right? You nailed your nutrition. And it felt the whole week was pretty seamless. Cool. Note down why. Like, what did you do that made this easier for you? Like, what made it so good? Note that stuff down, because it becomes so useful that when you have a bad week, well, you already have the solution right in front of you. It's like, oh, okay, well, when I had a good week, I did these things. So it becomes less about, I need to go on a diet or I need to try harder. More often than not, it's like, oh, on my good weeks, what I've done was I did this and I did this and I did this. Like, I had my groceries prepared. I spent time on Sunday mapping out my week, blah, 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 blah. So it gives you some actual useful steps as opposed to beating yourself up when things go wrong. Hopefully that makes sense.
It did. And that reminded me of something I heard or read from Adam Grant when he was speaking about perfectionism, in that he made it was something to do with doing really, really well in one of his exams. Yet he was just thinking about the one question that he got wrong, or two of the questions that he got wrong, and it was like never good enough.
Yep.
And then there was also something where he was talking about the fact that he won something. He actually won it, but the only thing he was thinking about is, if only I just did that little flip a bit different, because he was a diver. And it's like, we're always looking for the things that we want to improve or that we did wrong or the littlest errors. But if we never highlight our wins, how can we keep winning? We're always going to feel like we're failing. And then this is where it comes to, like, if you have a coach, you go to your coach and say, I'm not making any progress. Boo hoo, hoo, hoo. I'm like, really? This is where it really comes to expanding your meaning of progress. And this is why it's not your fault. It's just that you do not know any other way to measure progress. You don't know any other way to do any of this, which is why you need to be patient with yourself. Us as coaches, us as good coaches, we're freaking patient. We have separate, different, individualistic ways of measuring, of approaching you and your situation. You are not a number, you're a person that we want to help. The way that we do that is whatever it is that you need to just get to it's not to get to where you want to be, it's to get to the next step and figure out what the hell is stopping you from getting to that next step. Is the stepping stone too high up that you can't reach it? Do we need to bring that stepping stone down? Is the river rapids too rapid and we need to wait a little bit and do some other extra work or gain some resources because it's never going to slow down? Maybe we need to actually get something to help us cross that river rapid to get to the step. It's like there are so many different elements, but as we get through these stepping stones, the better we get at going through the stepping stones, the faster it becomes to tackle any of those problem situations. But if you're not coming across these problem situations, or when you do come across it, it's like, I'm just going to put coaching on hold. I'm just going to put this program on hold. I'm like, hold on a minute. This isn't about just training and nutrition. That's why we're a coach. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a trainer. I'm a coach. I do nutrition because I have nutrition degrees. I do training because I have training degrees, but I'm a coach. I'm helping you with where you are right now, troubleshooting where you are right now, and I'm having a conversation with you. I need to ask you questions, and we need to get you to realize for yourself, which you already know, is just reminding you over and over again that what you were doing before wasn't working, and we need to shift this way. And you said something about the F45 shit. And I'm like, no, dude, seriously, send this freaking shit home. Because what pisses me off more than anything, it pissed me off more before because it was worse before. I just did an in-body scan and I gained this much muscle and I lost this much fat in my 8-week challenge. I'm like, no, the fuck you didn't. That is like one of my biggest pet peeves, especially when it's in 8 weeks. But number two is just going to body fat, anything in particular. It's just stupid. Because number one, how are you feeling before that? You might have been feeling really good and you wanted to see like results for it. And then you get something you didn't like and then you get deflated. Or on the other side, it's like, what are you hoping to see out of it? What are you hoping to gain from it? Because it's not really going to help you get anywhere. It's something like I said this to my mom ages ago. She's like, just go get a blood test or something like that. She told me to go do something with it. Oh no, go get an x-ray or something like that. I can't remember. There's both. It's like, does it really matter about you going to the doctor to get whatever it is if you're not going to put in the steps to fix the thing? Because it's going to keep happening. And every single time my mom says that about an x-ray, go get this checked, which things that are minor that don't really need checking. Like I broke my toe. I felt like I broke my toe. Go get it x-rayed. But why? What's it going to do for me? I know what the freaking issue is. Stay off the freaking toe. What are they going to do? Like stay off your toe or say, yeah, it's broken. It's not fractured. Like, what's it going to do? It doesn't matter about the diagnosis if you're not going to do anything to get you out of that situation. Like, you can band-aid it all you want as well. Like, the band-aiding works for a certain period of time, but it's like, are you going to do anything to change anything else? Because that will only last for so long before the pressure is so big that it bursts again and then something else starts being a problem issue. That's a freaking body fat scale. Like, I hate that shit. I hate it. It's everywhere. It's like, but why? It's so inaccurate. The DEXA is still so inaccurate. It is like 6%. It's like you can be 6% above, 6% below. And it's like, is the DEXA itself calibrated? Is the person a proper, whatever they're called, persons, those people that, you know, that person actually needs to know what they're doing to calibrate it, to do this, that, and the other. So it can even be up to 12% if the person doesn't know what they're doing. Like, and how long before they got it calibrated in time. Like there is so much variability in this stuff. And also, what's your diet like? Because if you change your diet between months where you're eating a lot of carbs one month and the other month you're not, but nothing else has changed, the month that you ate more carbs, you're going to be gaining muscle because that's called lean body mass, where it soaks in the carbs. And then if you decide to go keto, it's going to probably just say that you lost muscle because now you're all deflated like a belly flop. But yeah, that was that rant thing because it really does matter. And the sustainability piece that you said is what I wanted to go off there.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, sorry.
Go. I'll say
No, I was going to say, like you said as well about like the stepping stones. I think that's really interesting. Something I've seen, and I use this with clients all the time, when they've had, a bad week or they've failed, quote unquote, right? And it's part of, I believe it's part of the stages of change model, but it's the upward spiral. And it's basically looking at it like this. Similar to, Thomas Edison, where he was like, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just figured out 10,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. It's the exact same thing. So if you're listening to this, right, and, okay, you tried a meal plan, it didn't work. You tried macros, it didn't work. You had these things, it didn't work. Every single time, my response is generally like, good, right? Great. Now we've got another piece of information. Now you know more than what you knew before. And the idea of the upward spiral, it's like every time you fail and you feel like you have to start all over again, you're actually not starting from the start. You're starting from a position of knowing what didn't work, of having more information. And over time, you know what? That upward spiral is we're starting from a higher point. There's going to be less work ahead of us. It'll be a small amount less, but it's still less. So even when you feel like you've failed and you're going backwards, it's actually still progress because now we've got another piece of information that shows us what's probably not going to work. And that's a really important thing for people to remember, especially if they've been, yo-yoing for a little while.
Yeah, and it's not actually yo-yoing. There's honestly, it's when there's this thing that's, here it is. Getting discouraged is a common obstacle after turning around because sometimes you need to step back to go forwards. And that's because going backwards doesn't lead directly to a new peak. Sometimes you feel and end up stuck. And it's not because you're on the wrong path. And sometimes you feel like you're stuck even longer and you're going backwards more, but you're not. It's just that you have to learn different things, different ways, because it's different from before. And you probably have to unlearn some things as well. And that's just like starting with a new coach. You're not starting again. You've learned a whole heap of shit from what you've done before. And it's just taking, that spirals thing. Like imagine that spirals thing that you see where it feels like you're just going in circles. Yeah, you are, but you're going in circles on the way up. And that isn't unique to you. That isn't a system default. That is just the system. It's not a bug. It's a default. It's part of the system. And you're just not seeing enough because this is exactly where a coach comes in. We give you that third eye. We show you that stuff. But that's the part with the sustainability as well. Sustainability is in the lifestyle you create around health and fitness, because health and fitness is part of the broader concept. And if you are this is why calorie deficit doesn't work as a lifestyle, because if your mind is just on that scale going down, how's that sustainable? If your measure of win and success and pass or fail is on a scale measure, how does that add to sustainability or life fulfillment? It's okay. It's putting yourself into the process, like you mentioned, with the success criteria. It's creating a lifestyle out of it, things that make you feel good. And the last thing that I want to touch on, because I know that I didn't realize how much time has passed, but when you spoke about that sustainability, the first thing that came to mind is strength, power. Back to what I said about my deadlifting. It's like, what is it that can start to excite you? What is it that you can start to pull yourself towards, drive you towards? What is it that can actually make you internally motivated to show up? You're not going to be motivated all the time, especially in winter. Like I'm not motivated in winter. It's a freaking nightmare to get my ass to the gym, but I still do it because now it's an identity. So using this as a motivation for you to start to create an identity and start to realize how much better it's making your life, which is never going to happen if you never focus on the wins or what you're falling short of. Commit yourself to the long term so you can start to learn how this all fits in. And the last thing I want to touch on, well, I want you to touch on, because I think this expands on quite a lot. I think back to why people fail, or why they quote unquote stop themselves, and what stops people. Like, this is whether you start with a coach, whether you start with even a coach, especially a coach, actually, because a lot of people feel like because they started with a coach, they're entitled to results. You're not entitled to results with a coach, because you still need to give it time, number one. And you will, like, it can be the best plan and it can still have time, but you will still not get results if you have the same mindset that you've had all the times you've failed before. Because that there's incongruence there. It's not going to work. You need to shift. This goes back to shifting the mindset. You can't change the body without the mindset. You can't get new results with an old mindset. Old tools don't open new doors. But yeah, it's regardless of whether you start with a coach or a new program or whatever, expecting to make linear change or see things move forwards is counterproductive, and it's going to kind of lead to a lot of unrealistic expectations and feeling like you're failing. Because, kind of like I said on my goal setting podcast, the map is not the territory. You might see that there's a map there and we need to go in this direction, but you don't know what actually is going to happen in the process. You might really struggle with some habits. You might have ADHD and try to manage all these different things at once. And then it takes you like 4 months to finally realize, hey, I just need to focus on the one thing. And even if that one thing doesn't feel like you're doing a lot, you need to, like, then that can be the thing that we need to start to work with. Like, no, this is actually moving the needle quite a lot. We don't want to add anything else in right now, because this is a whole new thing. You've never done this before. But you need to be patient with yourself, even if you don't have ADHD, because you don't even need ADHD. You just need kids. They'll take care of it for you.
Exactly.
I'll actually pass that over to you now, because you're also a parent, and I'm sure that you can add so much more context to that.
Oh, I would agree with everything you said there. It's spot on. And I think, like, in summary there, even from what you said before that, like, this idea of motivation, right? It's like everybody starts with, an extrinsic motivation. Like, we want something, we want some kind of change, right? But really, like, what the goal is when we talk about sustainability, like, sustainability to me is creating intrinsic motivation, which is enjoyment from the task itself, right? And that's where I think your analogy of the deadlifts is so important, and why I think strength training is kind of unique in that way, because there's real tangible progress. And, like, to me, it's like, if somebody, you can see it, you can feel it, like, I'm able to do something that I didn't think I would be able to do before, right? And yeah, as you say, like, it's making you feel powerful, it's making you feel strong, right? So it's quite easy there, not easy, but it's a simpler form of creating some intrinsic motivation. Like, nobody necessarily, like, if you're approaching dieting that way, like dieting and calorie deficit, you're never going to get to that point of being intrinsically motivated, right? It's never going to happen, because you're always talking about all the things you can't do, right? It's shit, it's negative. That's where I think the only way to have sustainable change when it comes to the whole picture, not just training, but the nutrition side as well, is to view it in this lens of, I am, eating the right thing to fuel my body. I'm taking care of myself. I'm eating things that make me feel good. That can work. That can create intrinsic motivation. But I am in a calorie deficit because I need to lose weight. Cool. It works for a phase, but it is never going to work as a long-term, like, sustainable shift to intrinsic motivation, right? Because it sucks. But I think what you said there about expectations, I think that's massively important. And it's like, a lot of the time, it's like, it's not that the plan was wrong. It's not that you're broken. Your metabolism's fine. Your hormones are probably fine. It's your expectations themselves were the problem. Like, this kind of stuff, like, and this is harsh truth, right? It's always going to take longer than you want it to. It's always going to be harder than you think it's going to be. It's always going to require more sacrifices, more effort, etc. But that doesn't mean that the plan was wrong. It doesn't mean that you're broken. It just means that your expectations at the start were wrong, right? And I think throwing that into, okay, when you were 20 years old, yeah, you could train 2 hours a day at the gym and, like, spend all day meal prepping, and you were shredded and all the rest of it, right? Maybe that's not your reality anymore. Maybe you've got a career. Maybe you've got kids, right? And that's where, going back to what I said at the start, sometimes I look at what people have been trying to do and it's like, yeah, no shit, that was never going to work. You got 3 kids and you're working 40 hours a week. Like, how are you ever going to make this work? Like, let's adjust the expectations here. And yeah, you know what? Maybe this isn't going to happen as fast as you want it to. It's not going to happen as fast as when you were 20 years old, right? But that's the trade-off. Like, having kids is amazing, right? But let's not kid ourselves, pardon the pun, and think that it's not going to impact other areas of our life, because it is, right? That's just the reality. So yeah, I think that's an important thing for people to acknowledge. Like, as much as I'm all about, being positive and empowering clients, like, I don't want to, perpetuate, I guess, toxic positivity, if you want to call it that, or then being in denial where like, oh yeah, I'll definitely be able to do all this stuff if I just set my mind to it. Because the reality is, like, sometimes you can't. Understanding that there's going to be trade-offs, and tying it back to when you said, losing the last 5 pounds or the last couple of kilos, etc. You know what? Sometimes you'll get to a point where that trade-off's just not worth it for you. And that's totally fine. Like, I throw myself in that category. Like, I'm strong, I'm fit, I've still got a hint of abs. Great, right? Could I get myself to a position of being absolutely shredded with veins on my abs again? Yes. Would I like that? Yeah, I guess so. Am I willing to do what's required to get there at this point in my life? No, definitely not, right? Because it's just not worth it to me. Because I'm in a position where I haven't tracked a macro in years, right? And I don't really want to, right? So I think that's an important thing too, like matching your expectations with the goal, because if you get that part wrong, yeah, you're probably setting yourself up to fail all over again.
That is, Max, you did it again, but I need to. Many things online, they're vague promises and they don't really come with territory. Everything has it has a direction. Everything is giving you a direction. Some are conflicting and some are confusing, but there's direction there. They're telling you a direction based off everything that you don't want right now and uncomfortable with, and ideally think that you should want, or that is the answer. Actually, no, it's not what you should want. It's what you want. But you think that what they're saying is the answer there. And it's kind of like when I mentioned the fat loss thing, it's, yeah, we want to look really good naked. Like, we care about vanity goals. Like, even like, I don't care about it as a priority now, because I care about the things that I know lead to that. And that's the fundamental shift. It's like, why would I want to focus on my physique goals when focusing on them isn't going to change shit? Like, I can stare at my delts until I go blue in the face because I haven't had, like, I decided to stop breathing because I got so entrenched in staring at them. They're not going to blow up. Like, I need to focus on the shit that's going to do that. And if I'm not getting my ass out of a calorie deficit and training my ass off, it's not going to happen. And then if I have more body fat to lose and I really want leaner legs, if I'm going to keep sabotaging myself every single time my pants feel even tighter, then I'm not going to see the results I want. Like, yeah, you're not going to gain fat, but you need to train really freaking hard to build the leg muscles that you want. And that comes with pants feeling really freaking tight, because your legs would just generally be bigger from having a lot more glycogen there as resident. Like, it resides there. It's not going to go anywhere. If you go from like not really training hard to training hard, you increase your glycogen, aka carb storage capacity, and it's just sitting there. And the other thing from that, like, that just increases the baseline, but then it fluctuates. Like, that's just what I've noticed going from like untrained to trained. You're able to like you just soak in a lot more of that stuff because you become more efficient. But that was just that point on it, because if you think about it in that concept, we need the territory, and we want that territory to be livable, not a war zone and not a total desert. We want the territory. And this, I mean, there's 2 more things I want to touch on. The first one was the one I was trying to find on my phone before I found it exactly where I wanted it. It was the trainer is a fixer, the coach is a facilitator. And that's exactly what we've been talking about. Like, we're not fixing problems. We're facilitating you to figure out, okay, there's nothing to fix, but there are things that we want to shift and change to create the lifestyle that you want. Because most of the time, the problem isn't the problem that we're looking at to fix. And that's why we stay stuck. And a coach asks the questions, a trainer just shoots answers at you that probably aren't even the answers to the, it's not even that they're not even the answers. It's like I said, it's not the right question that's being asked, which is why we try to dig deeper into this to get you to where you want to be. Like a coach has that territory. We care about the territory. A trainer just shoots directions at you to try to move you into the direction that you said you want because they want to keep you as a client. And then as soon as you want this, they change it for you. And then you wonder why you're still stuck because they don't call out the hard shit like Max said that he does. But the last thing I wanted to say is you mentioned this on the strength stuff, which is why I sent the thing in the chat because it's huge. When I was talking to a guy at the gym today, and he's a coach, but he was talking about the fact that he gets so excited when females come to him and say that they just want to build muscle because it's so rare to see people not so hyperfixated on the scale going down. And then we were talking about like deficits and body, like all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think I'll ever really be able to do, because I have a competing background. I'm like, I don't think I'll ever even think, like, consider even, well, I know as a fact, I won't even consider that ever. And I don't even think I'll want to do a diet for a very, very long time, let alone a comp. Like, I don't want to compete. It doesn't add value to my life. And I think most people just do it for the sake of doing it. They don't actually know why they're doing it. It's because it's just the fancy thing that's seen online, but they don't really. That can be something you can touch on if you want to. But the point of the fact is, I put so much value on my strength. And when I don't feel strong and energized, it's shit. When I don't feel my best and I don't feel fueled in the gym, it's shit. When my training performance is suffering and it's more than just one day and I keep suffering, I feel shit. And this can even happen when you're eating a lot of food because it might not be a food problem. It might be the fact that you downloaded some booty, Insta, IG, Snap, thirst picture program and it's all loaded with so much shit that you're just dragging your ass through the session. And it's really hard for you to progress on anything. Like, this is why progressive overload isn't just about seeing the numbers go up, because it's just like you can't effectively be your best and strongest and grow the muscle that you want if it's a shit ton of just everything versus doing less but better, because less isn't better if you don't make it better. And I think that's where a lot of the focus needs to go versus trying to optimize on something that's already good enough in the diet. Okay, that's my bow. I'll let you tie it off because that went, yeah.
No, I like it. I like it. I think as I've spent more and more time coaching, I find myself doing less and less, right? And I think like it's exactly what you just said. It's like less is more, right? Because especially like if I'm writing programs now for people, like they're always simple, right? Always. Like if I see someone like they come to me, like, oh, this is the program I was following from my previous coach, and there's like 12 exercises in a single session. I'm like, what the heck? Like, what am I even looking at here? Because if you were training at even close to the intensity required to make progress, you wouldn't be able to do this, right? So we're flawed from the beginning. Like, okay, there might be some ways you could argue depending on what those exercises are, but like not 12 proper exercises doing 3 to 4 working sets of each. Like that's insanity. Okay. What I really want to focus on, right, is okay, the less is more, but going, what are the things that are going to move the needle most? And if you're listening to this and you don't have a coach, you're doing it yourself, you can do this for yourself. It's like there's a hierarchy, there's a priority, right? And it's that thing, classic thing, like if you make everything a priority, then nothing's a priority. There are some things that do matter more, right? Absolutely. And it's where, if we just make this specific to strength training, that's where we've flipped to. But you know what? Like you see all these thirst trap programs to your reference, and it's like all this stuff. And like I could rag on them for days from just like a biomechanics lens and just go, you know what?
Oh my God.
You can put a band around your thighs and you can do a leg press. And you know what? It's going to make shit all difference at the end of the day, right? It really doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. Doing all these fancy glute things, doing your weird hip thrusts on a leg extension machine. I don't know what the deal is with that. But if you just keep it really simple, you know what? You find a squat variation that works for you, right? I don't think there's a massive difference between front, back squats, whatever, hack squat. Do whichever one works for you. Okay, but rinse that with a proper intensity, right? Let's say you're doing, I don't know, sets of anywhere from 6 to 10. rinse it properly. Okay, cool. Let's do that a couple of times per week. Let's pick a good hinge variation. I'm very fond of RDLs. Rinse that a couple of times per week. You're going to make more progress if you literally limited yourself to those 2 exercises and maybe a split squat or lunge variation than 14 different glute abduction specials, right? It's not that those things don't matter, but they are the cherry on top, and they don't matter if you're doing what I see happen a lot of the time. Oh yeah, I'm doing 5 sets of squats, and then you look at the squats and A, they either look like total trash, or B, you go, all right, your first rep looks just as cruisy. Your last rep looks just as cruisy as the first rep. The problem here is, I'm sorry to say it, like, you're not training anywhere near hard enough to expect a significant progress, right? And this is not me calling people out who are not confident in the gym, because it's not that at all. If you're not confident with movement, by all means, ease yourself into that, but pick variations where it is a leg press, or it is a hack squat, where it's a machine, and you can push yourself harder. Like, you can go so much harder there. So yeah, I think keeping it simple and focusing on the things that are going to move the needle forward is the key. And I will summarize this by saying there is one thing that matters more than all of that, which is making sure that you enjoy doing it, right? Because if you hate it, right, it doesn't matter how technically correct my program might be, because you're probably not going to do it for very long and you're not going to try very hard. So you do need to make sure that you're enjoying the process itself, because that's going to be the biggest predictor of long-term, like, actual results, right? And I think that's massively important. I say that to people all the time, like, after the first session, how are you feeling, blah, blah, blah. Did you have fun? Cool. If you're having fun, great. If you go, that was shit and I hated it, it's like, okay, we've got some red flags here.
Yeah, but I do just want to tie that off with, it's a mindset thing that will make you enjoy it, because
Oh yeah,
it's a complete mindset thing. It's not the fact that you need, like, avoid doing things you don't like. No, well, actually, most of the time, it's just the fact that you are looking at it from a different way, or the way that you've been introduced to it has been through the lens of, if this isn't shrinking my body, I hate it. Or from a mindset of, you've only ever done fasted training, or just coming from it from such a negative attitude. This is exactly why mindset is so important. And freaking hell, I loved this conversation. It has been so amazing. And I hope people listening to this can take away some notes and realize that if your trainer right now / coach isn't really facilitating your growth, and by growth, I mean growth. I don't mean scale going down, because that's not growth. By growth, I mean advancing your mind, your body, your life, making you realize that this is a part of something bigger. Then maybe you should start asking yourself some questions, because this is about so much more. It's about so much more. And Max, is there any last parting words that you want to leave and tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, parting words. I would agree with what you just said. I think as well, if your coach isn't spending the bulk of their time asking you questions, probably you have my permission as well to find a new coach, right? It should be that way. Yeah, you can find me. Instagram is probably the best way to find me. If you're looking for anything that is fitness, training, nutrition related, it's just Max Waldron Fitness. If you are a coach and you want to hear me ramble about all the things I hate within the fitness industry, then that would be max.strength.
Perfect. And that will be down in the show notes below. And if anyone here wants to leave us with any feedback, etc., we both will really appreciate it. I've been really loving the feedback I've been getting on my scary leap into the solo episodes. But honestly, the like, I just love it. Don't feel afraid or shy to reach out. I know a lot of people just like click on through, but please, and share it with someone. Like, I don't care if you share it to your stories, just share it to one person that you think it will benefit, so that they can start to see things differently, and you'll feel good for it in yourself, because you just helped someone get out of their own rat race. Love you all, and you will hear me on the next podcast.